Chapter 1109. Emperor Yong Lu hesitated before saying, "Sorry, Your Majesty does not need to apologize to this Chia, and there is nothing to apologize to this Chia. This Chia is living my own life and has nothing to do with Your Majesty." Empress Xianda said, "Just now, Teacher Gao came over and told this Chia that Your Majesty has been struggling for the past year. This Chia wants to ask, why is Your Majesty like this? What's the point of enduring the pain so painstakingly?" For Great Liang, Emperor Yonglu said, "Zhan wants to see Xie Yuan conquer the country and protect Great Liang. Zhan wants to see the peace of the world. Zhan hopes to help Empress Mother complete her wish in this lifetime, but Zhan does not have much time and might not be able to wait for that day." Empress Xianda was silent for a long time before replying, "So, this Chia understands." "Qing Zhan," Emperor Yonglu said, "You make plans for yourself. What does Your Majesty want this Chia to do?" Empress Xianda suddenly turned around, her eyes glistening with tears. She said, "You want this Chia to hide my identity and live the life of a normal person? Or live the rest of my life in this palace in luxury? Or find a good husband to remarry?" With each sentence she said, the pain in Emperor Yong Li's eyes grew. He grabbed the blanket under his hand without batting an eyelid and said faintly, "As long as you are happy." Empress Xianda suddenly turned her head away. Emperor Yong Lu could see a large tear falling on the back of her hand. When she spoke again, her voice was calm. She said, "This Chia understands. Many thanks to Your Majesty for considering so much for this Chia. This Chia will do this. Your Majesty should think about how to write the succession decree. Some things need to be planned early." She stood up and said, "This Chia has other matters and will leave first. Your Majesty, rest well, and remember to drink a pot of wine with this Chia at Shui Hu Pavilion." She left. Empress Xianda rarely got angry, especially in these days. Emperor Yong Lu had a good relationship with her and had a warm smile every day. But even the softest water would have a temper. When it was angry, it would be like a block of ice, so stubborn that it made people angry. But he could not bear to be angry. After Empress Xianda left, Emperor Yong Lu coughed violently. He felt the handkerchief under his pillow and wiped his mouth. Eunuch Deng, who was standing at the side, hurriedly served hot water and said, "Your Majesty, be careful." Eunuch Deng. Emperor Yong Lu frowned. "Did I do something wrong?" His face showed a rare youthful confusion, causing Eunuch Deng to feel a lump in his throat. Eunuch Deng had served Emperor Yongla for many years and had watched him grow up. Emperor Yongla's current appearance reminded him of the time when Emperor Yongla was poisoned by Emperor Xiaowu's favorite concubine. Empress Xiao hugged Emperor Yongla and cried bitterly when she learned from a master of the Gao family that he would not live past the age of 35. At that time, the still young Emperor Yongla comforted Empress Xiao helplessly. He asked Eunuch Deng in confusion, "Eunuch Deng, is my poison very serious?" The young man grew from a gentle and elegant prince to an unfathomable emperor. But there would still be a day when he would ask the people around him in confusion, "Did I do wrong?" Before Eunuch Deng could speak, Emperor Yonglu sighed and said, "I am so envious of Xie Yuan. Even though it is very difficult for Xie Yuan and Zhan, that kid's luck is better than Zhan's. If Zhan can live on." He did not continue. There were many things in the world that ended because of an if, because there was no if. In 10 days' time, Xie Jingxing took over the Ding capital. The emperor of Mingqi, Fu Xiuyi, was shot to death by the chaotic army. Chapter 1110. Speaking of it, it was really funny that Fu Xiuyi became the ruler of a subjugated country. He originally said in high spirits that he would live and die together with Ming Qi and would definitely fight with the soldiers until the last moment. As long as the Ding capital was not destroyed, he would still be the emperor of Ming Qi and would not surrender to anyone. But at the last moment, one did not know why he changed his mind and wanted to secretly leave. Perhaps he had the idea of making a comeback one day. However, Fu Xiuyi had calculated everything, but did not calculate the human heart. Those advisors of his were able to see the situation of Ming Qi earlier than him. When the advisors knew that Fu Xiao he made a fake decision to perish together with the enemy, but he himself wanted to escape, they suddenly flew into a rage. Speaking of which, Fu Xiao he was also caught in a cocoon of his own making. His group of advisors were initially roped in by him using gold and silver or using beauties. As the saying goes, a hero does not ask about one's background. Fu Xiao he thought that he was a person who cherished talents and did not look at the other party's identity. Thus there were all sorts of people in his advisors. There were robbers, bandits, and even evil people who killed without blinking an eye. These people did not have any good or evil distinction and followed Fu Xiao because he was able to provide them with the treasures and women that they wanted so that they could start a great undertaking. Now that the great undertaking had been destroyed, how could Fu Xiao still want to run away? Those advisors were the most courageous and had the most ferocious would think of ways to tie Fu Xiao up on the city walls and personally took a bow, an arrow, to shoot Fu Xiao to death. Finally, they chopped off Fu Xiao's head to claim credit from Xie Jingxing and hoped that he would surrender. Fu Xiao had traversed unhindered for a lifetime and did not think that he would end up like this. Since he was not like a monarch who would perish together with the country, at least he could maintain his integrity. He was also not able to preserve his life and planned to stage a comeback in the second half of his life. Instead, he was like a prisoner that was shot to death in front of the Ding capital's commoners by the people that he had spent a lot of money to win over, and even became a token to claim credit from the enemy. The last thing he saw in a daze was a young man sitting on a tall horse at the foot of the city gate tower in front of thousands of soldiers. He held the reins in his hand and looked over lazily. He was as cynical as ever, and his eyes were clearly filled with contempt. But before he could think about it, he couldn't see anything. His great cause, his plans and ambitions, all came to a screeching halt at this moment. He still could not understand. He had clearly become the emperor. He had clearly planned for this entire life. In the end, how could he be defeated by an enemy that he had wanted to eradicate from the very beginning? Perhaps God was unfair, or perhaps he was unlucky. That's why he lost. Downstairs, Xie Jingxing made a tiss sound and said, Fu Xiao, he really has the ability to scatter people's hearts to this extent. People's hearts won't last long if they are tempted by money. Gao Yang smiled. Let's go. Let's go to the city. Oh yes. Ji Yushu said. Princess Rong Xian and the Su family's people have been rescued. Now, Xie Jingxing's expression did not change. Protect them. As for the rest, let them be. When Xin Miao received the news, she was in a daze for a long time. She did not expect that the enemy of the past lifetime would be solved so cleanly and neatly. But she also felt that everything seemed to be as it should be. Fu Xiao, he had reaped what he sowed early, and there would be a day when there would be a harvest. Mei Foran had plotted with a tiger for its skin and would eventually be bitten by the tiger. They were always making use of each other all the time, using money and beauties to exchange for what they wanted. This kind of people's hearts seemed to be omnipotent on the surface, but ultimately would not last long. That was why Fu Xiao would be betrayed by his own aides, and that was why Mei Foran would die in the hands of the man who pampered her to the heavens in the past lifetime. Chapter 11:11. Xin Miao thought that after knowing the ending of these two people, she would definitely be happy, but at this moment, there was not much feeling in her heart. It was as if she had only done what she should do and did not take revenge as her responsibility for the rest of her life. Because she looked at her lower abdomen, she still had more important things in the present. Trapped in the shackles of hatred, the one who could not walk out was herself. But Xie Jingxing and this child finally let her walk out from that long nightmare. The longer one lived alone, the calmer one's heart would be. She had finally done the last thing that she could do for Fu Ming and Wan Yu. She wanted to live well in her current life. Luo Tan was looking at the flowers outside and said, "The lotus flowers are really good. Biao youngest sister, let us go for a walk later." Xin Miao nodded her head. The lotus flowers were very good, and Empress Xinda loved to look at lotus flowers. Emperor Yong Li's health was also getting worse by the day. The Edict of Succession had already been privately discussed with Emperor Yong Li's trusted ministers. Emperor Yong Lu did not hide his illness from them, and the few ministers had already secretly arranged everything. If there was really a day when Emperor Yong Lu did not wake up, everything would take its course, and the Edict of Succession would be announced to the world. When Xie Jingxing returned to the court, what would be waiting for him would be the responsibility of the entire Great Liang. Naturally, Emperor Yong Li's illness was also hidden from Xie Jingxing. These things were like heavy shackles, and those who knew would not be happy. This was also Emperor Yong Li's own choice. And at this time, Empress Xinda was the calmest. She still brewed tea, read books, played chess, and wrote every day. She chatted with Emperor Yong Lu about daily life and occasionally teased Shen Miao. If one ignored Emperor Yong Li's increasingly pale face, perhaps everything looked no different from before. In the Weiyang Palace, Empress Xinda looked outside and said, "It just rained today, and when night falls, it will definitely be very cool." This concubine cannot bear to drink that small jar of snow wine. "Let's do it tonight. How about your majesty accompany this concubine to drink it?" Emperor Yong Lu sat on the chair and glanced at Empress Xinda before laughing. "One jar. Do you want to get drunk?" But his words were very gentle. If one could get drunk and not wake up, who wouldn't want to? Empress Xinda muttered to herself. She then said, "One jar of wine isn't enough to make one drunk. This concubine's alcohol tolerance is very good. When I was young, I often stole wine with my older brother in the mansion to drink." When Emperor Yongle heard this, he showed a rare look of interest and said, "This doesn't seem like something you would do. This is nothing." When Empress Xinda said this, there was some pride in her voice. "Drinking with my brothers, I have never lost." At that time, his father even boasted that he would definitely find an aged wine that could make his concubine drunk with just one sip. He searched for a long time, but to no avail. Later, when I entered the palace, I didn't dare to drink too much, so I didn't drink anymore. One moment it's tea, the next moment it's wine. Emperor Yonglu sighed. "Your preferences are very far apart. Drinking tea clears one's mind. Drinking alcohol is indulgence." Empress Xinda smiled. "So tonight, your majesty, don't put on airs and indulge for once." The snow wine was personally brewed by this concubine. Although it can't compare to bejeweled nectar, it can still be compared to moon breeze. "All right," Emperor Yonglu said, "I will accompany you for this one time." In the late summer, the night breeze blew gently. The lake was 10 li green. The wind lotuses were slender and elegant. As the breeze blew, green ripples appeared. Long as summer was long, and even at the end of the 8th month, there was no chill. In a small pavilion in the middle of the lake, there was a small jar of wine, a few pastries, and 2 wine bowls on the table. Emperor Yonglu looked at the round wine bowl in front of him and raised his eyebrows. "Use this." When he made this action that Xie Jingxing loved to do, it was very similar to Xie Jingxing. Chapter 11:12. If you drink it in small sips, you won't be able to taste the snow brew. Empress Xinda smiled and said, "Only when you drink it in big mouthfuls like this will it be sweet and refreshing. You usually drink like this?" Emperor Yonglu frowned. "Nonsense. This Chia drinks alone and no one sees. Why do you care so much?" Empress Xinda was unconcerned. She raised a small wine jar and poured wine for Emperor Yonglu. Emperor Yonglu wanted to say something, but stopped. He looked deeply at Empress Xinda and was silent. Empress Xinda brewed snow brew every year, but this was the first time Emperor Yonglu drank with her. For so many years, she brewed tea alone and brewed wine alone. Flowers bloomed and wilted, and she lived freely in the palace. She did a good job as empress, but people almost forgot that she was just a woman and would be lonely. Most of the time, she could only taste loneliness alone, as though the wine was slightly bitter. Tao Gugu and Deng Gonggong stood far away, as though they wanted to leave this rare moment for Emperor and Empress. Empress Xinda passed the wine bowl to Emperor Yonglu and smiled. "Every time Jingxing comes to the palace banquets, he likes to drink with this bowl. This Chia sees that your majesty seems to be very envious." This Xie does not need to care so much tonight. With only this Xie here, this Xie will not laugh at your majesty's lack of etiquette. What a joke. What is there to be envious of? After Emperor Yongle finished speaking, he picked up the wine bowl and looked at it in a picky manner. However, he still took a sip from the edge of the bowl. Empress Xianda saw this and couldn't help but laugh. She said, "What is your majesty doing? You should learn from this Xie." She picked up the wine bowl and drank with her head raised. Even though it was just a simple action, it was still very elegant and pleasing to the eye when she did it. Emperor Yongle coughed lightly. Nonsense. But his gaze followed Empress Xianda and was very gentle. Empress Xianda poured another bowl for herself and said with a smile, "When I was little, I followed my father to read history books. I was very envious of those great heroes who were down and out in the world. They were handsome and heroic, eating meat and drinking wine in big mouthfuls. They were at the edge of the world. I felt that this kind of life was not a waste to live in this world. I thought that in the future, I would definitely marry such a great hero. I would make tea for him in the day and drink with him in the night." As she said this, her eyes shone brightly. It was as if she had returned to the time when she was a young girl, asking for wine from her elder brother. What happened next? Emperor Yongle asked. Later on, this concubine married the emperor. The emperor refused to eat meat and drink wine in large mouthfuls. He really couldn't be considered to be unrestrained, nor was he coarse. On the contrary, he was very cold. This concubine regretted it. Emperor Yongle narrowed his eyes as he looked at her. Her cheeks gradually turned red. He didn't know if she was drunk or not. Emperor Yongle thought that she was definitely drunk. When Empress Xianda was sober, she would not say such childish words to criticize him. He said, "Didn't you say you could hold your liquor well? Why are you acting like a drunkard in front of me?" "I'm not drunk," Empress Xianda said. "I do want to get drunk, but after so many years, I have no choice but to stay sober." Emperor Yongle couldn't smile anymore. It was really this concubine's bad luck to be married to the emperor. Everything was fine, but I had to share my husband with countless women. Even those big families have concubines. The main wife at least has child. This concubine doesn't even have a child of her own. This marriage isn't good. Empress Xianda smiled and said, "That's why this concubine is very envious of the Qin Wang Fei. The Qin Wang Fei doesn't have an easy life and has many things to worry about. But she is luckier than this concubine. She still has a choice. Jingxing treats her very well. Jingxing isn't as cruel as the emperor." Chapter 11:13. Emperor Yongle was silent for a long time, so long that he could hear the frogs croaking in the pond and the cicadas chirping on the willow trees. He said, "You also have a choice." Qin Zhen. Qin Xie did not have a choice from the start. Empress Xianda interrupted him. "Qin Xie's heart is all on your majesty. How can I have the time to make other choices?" Emperor Yongle was stunned. Empress Xianda had already raised her wine bowl and drank the second bowl of wine. "When your majesty sees Qin Xie, is there any difference?" Empress Xianda looked at him. "Do you also feel that Qin Xie's choice in this life is something that I have to do?" "Yes." Emperor Yongle paused before saying, "You are very good. You are the best empress of Great Liang. No one can do better than you. Back then, Imperial Mother liked you a lot, and I also like you a lot. You are intelligent, generous, and the entire inner palace was organized well by you. It was not wrong for me to choose you." Empress Xianda laughed, and as she laughed, she almost burst into tears. She said, "As expected, the choice that your majesty had to make is actually Empress Xianda and not Qin Zhen. Qin Xie understands." She looked at the moon in the sky, and there seemed to be sparkles at the corner of her eyes. When she turned her head, she was back to her usual gentle and calm self. She said, "Qin Xie has considered the things that your majesty told Qin Xie before. I feel that your majesty is right. After all, it is my own life, and I have to live it." Emperor Yongle stared at her and felt his throat was dry. After a moment, he managed to ask, "Did I find it?" "Not yet." Empress Xianda smiled slightly, "But there is no rush for these things. When that day comes, let nature take its course." Emperor Yonglu was speechless. Empress Xinda raised her bowl and said, "This bowl of snow wine, Qin Xie will toast your majesty. After being husband and wife for so many years, it is fate from the previous life, no matter if it is good fate or bad fate. But in these years, while Qin Xie's life is not very good, it is not bad. Many thanks, your majesty." Emperor Yonglu also raised his wine bowl. However, if one looked closely, one could see that his fingers were trembling slightly, as if he was unable to hold it firmly. However, he hid it very well. He immediately covered it up with his sleeve and drank all the wine in the bowl. After drinking a big bowl in one go, it was no longer sweet and mellow. From his throat to his internal organs, he felt a burning pain in his heart, making him feel that the bitterness was comparable to life. He saw Empress Xinda stand up and say to him with a smile, "Actually, this jar of wine looks like a lot, but it was emptied after drinking a few bowls with Emperor. It was a waste of such a beautiful night, but it didn't matter, the future was long. This concubine had a good time drinking with His Majesty today, so this concubine will first go out for a stroll. Your Majesty should also rest. It's late at night and the dew is heavy. Be careful not to catch a cold." She left in a brisk manner. Thinking back to what she had said just now, it was clear that she was bidding farewell to something. Now that the words of farewell were finished, the wine of farewell was finished. What was left was just like now, to leave his world step by step and never return. Emperor Yonglu turned to look at Empress Xinda's departing back. Her figure disappeared into the long corridor. She didn't even turn her head back. Her steps were especially firm. His heart suddenly ached, and an indescribable pain slowly spread from the bottom of his heart to his limbs. His heart was beating very fast, almost as if it was convulsing. He could not breathe, and he could not speak a complete sentence. He suddenly fell down from his throne. Eunuch Deng was waiting at the side and jumped in fright when he saw the scene. He hurried over. He helped Emperor Yonglu up, but saw the other's face was terrifyingly pale, his lips trembling. His heart shook, and he immediately called for the Tai and the guards to send Emperor Yonglu back to Yang, Exine Hall. Chapter 11:14. Empress Xinda walked in the night. As the wind blew, the wine she drank seemed to be forced to spill out. The temporary dizziness disappeared in an instant, and she became awake again. She held onto the railing by the pond and sighed tiredly. She knew that the words she said today were in a fit of pique, but she was extremely afraid of how long Emperor Yongla had left to live. She wanted to avoid that result. She didn't want to see, she didn't want to hear, she stubbornly blocked her ears. But Emperor Yongla always brought it up and made her face things she didn't want to face. Even dirt had some of its nature, let alone a person. Aunt Tao said, "Nyang Nyang, it's cold outside. Let's go back first." Empress Xinda shook her head. She wore a string of prayer beads on her wrist. She had gotten them for Emperor Yongla in the temple. Every night, she would recite the prayer beads and copy scriptures, praying that the heavens would pity the people and let a miracle happen. Each of the prayer beads had been polished until they were smooth. It was clear that Empress Xinda had worn them for many years. She looked at the moon in the sky. The moon was very round. Not long after this battle, it would be a year. The moon was full and waning in a year. Everything had a good ending. She was about to receive her merit, but she just couldn't control herself and did some things that were out of control. She felt a bit disgusted with herself. She turned her head and wanted to walk forward. Suddenly, he heard a crackling sound. He looked down and saw that the string of Buddhist beads in his hand had broken. The Buddhist beads scattered from the broken string and fell to the ground, making a crisp sound as they hit the ground. Why did the prayer beads break for no reason? Aunt Tao, Empress Xinda murmured. A wave of uneasiness suddenly rose in her heart. It was as if someone had grabbed her heart, and she couldn't breathe for a moment. Nyang Nyang. Aunt Tao jumped in fright and quickly came to support her. Empress Xinda waved her hand and squatted down in a panic. She said, "Quick, help me pick it up." As soon as Aunt Tao squatted down, she saw the little eunuch who had been following Eunuch Deng running over in a hurry. He said with a panicked expression, "Your Highness, His Majesty, is not well. Please go and take a look." Empress Xinda had just picked up a prayer bead that had fallen. Hearing this, her hand couldn't help but let go. The prayer bead spun on the ground and fell into the pond. It didn't even make a splash on the surface of the water. With a pop, it sank into the water and disappeared. In Yangshin Palace Hall, the eunuchs and palace maids outside were all kneeling on the ground. Eunuch Deng stood in the corner of the room with his head bowed. He looked very sad. When Empress Xinda entered, Gao Zhan had just come out. Seeing her, he shook his head. Empress Xinda staggered. Fortunately, she was holding on to Tao Gugu's hand, so she didn't fall. After a while, she said, "All of you can leave." Emperor Yongle waved his hand as well. Everyone in the room retreated. Empress Xinda stepped forward. She walked very slowly, as if she was resisting an ending that she didn't want to believe. But she had to go forward. When she walked in, she half knelt in front of the bed and looked at the person on the bed. Emperor Yongle also looked at her. After a while, he smiled and said, "That's good. Before I leave, I finally drank the snow wine you brewed." Singji. Empress Xinda looked at him with tears in her eyes. She said, "Singji, Emperor Yongle's character, not your majesty." That was when she was still a young girl. Empress Xiao liked her and said Xieqi's character to her. Empress Xinda liked Xieqi's character and felt that this person was very upright. Chapter 11:15. Even though in the long years he had caused her irreparable harm, but Empress Xinda's heart still could not leave him. Was life fated to have such a fate? This fate did not come perfectly. It could even be called a predestined fate. When this predestined fate was about to end, she stubbornly refused to let go. Like a moth flying into a flame, until the last moment, she would never let go. "Qingzhen, I cannot accompany you anymore," Emperor Yongle said apologetically. "When you married me, I thought you would be protected. In reality, after so many years, you have not received anything." He spoke very slowly. After every sentence, he had to rest for a while. It seemed to be very tiring. Empress Xinda said, "Don't say any more." The two of them, ever since they became empresses, one called himself Zhen and the other Qinxie. Only when their lives were about to reach the end, when they would not be able to meet again, did they use you and I to address each other as if they were a normal couple. He said, "Go live your own life. You are so good, you will definitely be happy in the future. Marry someone else. Don't choose a selfish husband like me. Find someone who loves you." Empress Xinda sobbed. She suddenly felt her hand being grabbed. She saw Emperor Yongle's bright eyes staring at her. He gritted his teeth and said, "But I am not willing. I do not want. I'm very selfish. You are my woman. I do not want you to marry someone else." Empress Xinda stilled. "This year, I have worked hard to live, hoping to live a few more days. Actually, it is not because I want to see Xie Yuan rule the world. The dust has settled. There's nothing I cannot let go of. I am just reluctant." He struggled to breathe. "I am reluctant to part with you. Even if I have to be husband and wife with you for half a day, one more moment is good. When I first saw you and you were summoned to the palace, it was not Mother's idea. It was me from the start. I told Mother that I thought you were good. After so many years, you thought I was satisfied with Empress Xinda. Actually, it was not. I said anyone could be the Empress as long as they could do it well. Actually, it was not like that. It was you from the start. Those words were all lies." Empress Xinda covered her mouth and said, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Emperor Yongle's face turned even paler. His voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. He said, "It is a pity that my fate is not good and I have implicated you for life." He reached out as if wanting to help Empress Xinda wipe away the tears on her face. But halfway through the action, his hand drooped down powerlessly. His eyes closed. Empress Xinda covered her mouth, burying herself in the bedding and crying bitterly. She cried her heart out, but no one outside could hear her. She buried her voice in the thick bedding, wishing that she could bury herself in it as well. From now on, she would not hear, see, blame, or think. The incense in the copper stove rose in spirals and dispersed in the air. There were only suppressed sobs in the room. The moon outside the window was bright and gentle, so full that it didn't seem real. A moment later, Empress Xinda stood up. She gently tucked the blanket over Emperor Yonglu and kissed his lips. She tidied her hair in front of the mirror, wiped away her tears, and slowly opened the door. A room full of eunuchs and palace maids were kneeling outside. Eunuch Deng bowed and came forward. Empress Xinda said calmly, "His Majesty has passed away." Eunuch Deng was startled and then knelt down solemnly. He placed a horsetail whisk in front of him and kowtowed a few times. When the eunuchs and palace maids outside saw this, they also knelt down and kowtowed. Their voices were sorrowful and resounded in the 9 palaces. Chapter 11:16. His Majesty has passed away. Shen Miao looked towards Empress Xinda. Empress Xinda was wearing a plain white silk dress, and her expression was still gentle and calm, as if nothing could shake the calmness in her heart. After a short period of chaos in the court, it finally calmed down. Before Emperor Yonglu died, he had arranged everything, including the Edict of Succession and the possible turmoil in the court. Even though there were people who were ready to move, the troops that Emperor Yonglu arranged were not just for show. Moreover, Xie Jingxing had sent news of victory, and everyone knew that Emperor Yonglu had no sons, and the throne was passed down to his only blood-related brother. This was a fact that had long been decided. It was not that there were no doubts, but the doubts would eventually fade away. Xie Jingxing's performance of bravery and Emperor Yonglu's thorough arrangements made the court impregnable, and at this time, there was no chaos. Perhaps they knew that once Prince Rui returned, he would not only bring back victory, but also the territories of Mingqi and Qin. This chaotic world would be completely unified, and the throne would not be that important. It was better to be well-behaved and wait for the new emperor to return in triumph and ascend the throne. Then they would be able to get a share of the credit. There were only benefits in the previous court, but what about the inner palace? The females in the inner palace lost the monarch that they relied on to survive, and naturally were at a loss. Some were seeking death, but most of them were planning for the rest of their lives. Among the concubines in Emperor Yonglu's inner palace, most of them were the daughters of the court officials, and there were almost none that he took the initiative to bring in. Moreover, Emperor Yonglu was born cold, and other than doting on Lu Jing, he did not have any lust for females. Thus there was no lingering love between him and those concubines. After Emperor Yonglu passed away, these women took the initiative to ask their families for help, hoping to find a better way out for the rest of their lives. Empress Xinda calmly handled everything and held a national funeral before entering the imperial tomb. There was no request for anyone to be buried with him, and Emperor Yonglu had instructed Deng Gonggong about his funeral matters, and everything was done according to his wishes. Shen Miao came to visit Empress Xinda at night. Ever since Emperor Yonglu entered the imperial tomb, she was exceptionally calm. Today was the Mid-Autumn Festival, and the full moon was in the sky, but she was in the Wei Yang Palace listening to the servant playing the zither. Shen Miao let the palace maid who was playing the zither leave. Empress Xinda then saw her and seemed to be extremely tired. She smiled again and said, "You have come. The weather is getting cold, and your ladyship needs to wear more clothes. If one wants to listen to the zither, then heat up the small stove to prevent one from catching a cold." Shen Miao said. Empress Xinda smiled disapprovingly. She pointed at the mooncakes on the table and said, "The imperial kitchen made them. Ben Gong had wanted to have someone deliver them to you, but then I thought that they had already been delivered, so I didn't bother." Shen Miao smiled. "Your ladyship should also eat some." Empress Xinda waved her hand. "I have no appetite." The edict for the succession of the throne had been passed down, and when Xie Jingxing returned to Longyi, he would ascend the throne, and at that time Shen Miao would be the empress. Speaking of which, it was not appropriate to address Empress Xinda like this. However, the two of them didn't care. These days, this consort has been thinking about the past. "Originally, I thought that your Majesty had passed away." This was a fact that this consort had known for a long time, and that this consort would slowly get used to it. But as time passed, he felt more and more uncomfortable. Every day one would feel that one's heart was empty, as if something was missing. Qin Wang Fei, after Jingxing left, Are you also like this? Shen Miao was surprised for a moment. Was it longing? Naturally there was. Normally one would feel that it was nothing special to be in front of one's eyes every day, but when one really separated, one would then be shocked to realize what one had lost. When one separated, one would be able to understand many of one's feelings. But Shen Miao subconsciously touched her lower abdomen. Most likely it was because there was a little fellow in her abdomen that these long and torturous days were not so boring. Chapter 11:17. Most likely you and Ben Gong are different. Empress Xinda did not wait for Shen Miao to reply and continued. In the past, His Majesty did not know who you are and inquired about your matters. Ben Gong listened and knew that you were a person with ideas. You dealt with the imperial family of Mingqi and protect the Shun family. From the beginning, you most likely had your own ideas. As for meeting Jing Xing and marrying him, it was all coincidental and let nature take its course. If you did not meet Jing Xing, you can also live your own life because your initial goal was not to become someone's wife. But Ben Gong is different. She looked at the ruby on her long armor and said, Ben Gong's family is rich and stable, and there is no spearhead in the disputes with the court, and was born without worries. When Ben Gong met the emperor, Ben Gong felt that the most important thing in life was to become his wife and accompany him for a lifetime. She propped her head on her elbow and spoke slowly, as if she was going to fall asleep in the next moment, but she was still talking. Perhaps it was because Ben Gong's first half of life was too worry-free that one did not know that becoming a person's wife was such a difficult matter. Shen Miao did not speak. Empress Xinda was too bitter. These days she did not speak anything, but Shen Miao understood that kind of feeling. This was because talking wouldn't change anything. But sometimes it was good to be able to say it. Now, that Empress Xinda was willing to speak it out. At least it was better than keeping it in her heart. After the emperor left, Ben Gong did not know what to do. The females in the inner palace were also dismissed. This palace was originally noisy and annoying, but now it was deserted, making one feel strangely lonely. Ben Gong thought that it would be better if one did not meet the emperor in the beginning. One would rather be like you, to fight against the imperial family and protect the Shun family carefully. It would be better than this destined sad ending. Her words were too sad and too desperate. Shen Miao comforted her. This official's wife is also the same. In fact, no one's entire life is always peaceful and smooth. Ever since this official's wife was born, other than the concern of parents and older brothers, there was not a moment when the heavens bestowed a good life. This official's wife never dared to hope for these, so one can only believe in oneself for everything. Meeting your highness is this official's wife's good fortune, but if not for your highness, this official's wife's path would have been even more difficult. Pausing, she continued, it is the same for the empress. Even if the emperor leaves first, the empress should think of herself and live for herself. No matter how hard the road is, keep walking. This is what the emperor wants to see. Empress Xinda was silent for a long time, so long that Shen Miao thought that she did not hear her words at all before she heard her say, Qin Wang Fei. Thank you. I understand what you're saying. It's just that this is too difficult. That night, Shen Miao and Empress Xinda sat for a long time. They didn't say much, but it felt like they had said a lot. After Shen Miao left, Empress Xinda sat alone in the palace for a long time. Empress Xinda didn't get up until Tao Gugu came to urge her to go to bed and rest. Aunt Tao didn't leave until she saw her freshen up and go to bed. After closing the door, the person on the bed sat up again. She lit the lamp and rummaged through the cabinets to find clothes. It was not the emperor's court robes, but a moon-white plain dress. She loved such simple and refreshing colors, but after becoming the empress, she could no longer wear such styles. If it was not exquisite and grand, she would not be able to suppress the other concubines. She looked calm and composed, but in fact she was an introverted young lady who did not like to speak. She wore a simple dress and sat in front of the mirror. Lightly brushing her eyebrows and lightly applying rouge, she looked extremely pretty. Chapter 11:18. She took out a pen and paper from the drawer and started to write a letter. Forget it. She put the letter into an envelope. Finally, Empress Xianda took out an exquisite jade box from the bottom of the cabinet. That box was covered with a faint layer of dust. From the moment she married Emperor Yongle, she knew of his illness. To marry a man who did not know when he would die, it required a lot of courage. But she was the bravest young lady in the imperial censor's residence, and most yearned to be a hero. Emperor Yongle was not considered a hero, as he played politics and won over the hearts of the people, and was not upright. But Empress Xianda still felt that he was still her hero. In the beginning and in the end, there was a slender bottle in that jade box. She took it out and held it in her palm. On the day she married Emperor Yongle, Empress Xianda prepared this bottle for herself. She looked at herself in the mirror and said, "Qing Zhen, the people of Jianghu are heroic, righteous, and daring to love and hate. Even though you are in an official's family, you yearn for Jianghu. If there is a day that he unfortunately leaves, you must follow in the Yellow Springs. This is your decision." For so many years, every year, Empress Xianda would take out that bottle to take a look and was glad that the bottle was not used. Every year, she stole it from the heavens, and it was an exceptionally happy time. Now, it was finally the time to take it out. She was very timid, so timid that after Xie left, she did not have the courage to live the remaining days. She was also very bold, so bold that she knew from the beginning that she would have such an ending, but still resolutely went forward. "Xingji, I am here to see you," she said softly and drank the contents of the bottle in one gulp. The moon gradually rose from the clouds and hung high above the willow tree branches, as if it was smiling at the joys and sorrows of the world. It was so perfect that one wanted to cry. Shen Miao's rest that night was very uncomfortable. Her dreams were always exceptionally noisy, and she wanted to hear clearly what was going on, but she could not understand. Only when Jing Zhe woke her up, Shen Miao looked at the bright sky outside and got up. When she touched her forehead, it was cold sweat, and a trace of uneasiness flashed across her heart. Luo Tan ran in from outside. Her eyes were red as she looked at Shen Miao and said softly, "The Empress has passed away." Shen Miao took the handkerchief from Jing Zhe's hands, and it fell to the ground with a paw sound. In less than a month, Emperor Yongle and Empress Xianda passed away. The world mourned. When Emperor Yongle passed away, Empress Xianda sacrificed herself for him. Those imperial concubines who used to fight with each other in the palace also rushed over when they heard the news. When Empress Xianda was the empress, she was kind and generous. In addition, Emperor Yongle wasn't close to her, so these favored concubines didn't have any thoughts about Empress Xianda. There were even people who sighed when they learned of this. Empress Xianda's father appeared very calm from beginning to end. Perhaps he had already predicted that Empress Xianda would make this decision. Although he was sad, he did not find it unacceptable. Shen Miao followed the etiquette of the Empress' grave and brought Empress Xianda and Emperor Yongle together into the Emperor's tomb. At this point, this group of wise rulers and virtuous empresses could only forever remain in the history books of the Great Liang. What followed was a lot of things. Emperor Yongle had passed away, and there was still Empress Xianda. Empress Xianda had passed away, so who would be in charge of the court? Even though Emperor Yongle had left the Edict of Succession, but Xie Jingxing had not ascended the throne yet. Speaking of which, it was not possible to call Shen Miao as the empress. But Emperor Yongle did not have any other siblings, and the only blood relation was Xie Jingxing. Chapter 1119. No imperial court was completely stable, especially when there was no leader. The court that had started to calm down started to stir again. There were always some restless officials who would try to do something. They had ambition, but no guts, but they were not willing to let go of this opportunity. Shen Miao asked Deng Gonggong, "Is the previous court quarreling very badly now?" Deng Gonggong said, "Exactly. Currently, the previous court wants to elect a person to temporarily supervise the court and wait for His Highness Prince of First Rank to return to Long Yi before making further plans." Presumptuous. Shen Miao's lips twitched. Really want to steal the country. Deng Gonggong kept quiet. He did not know why, but he always felt that this young Prince Rui's consort had an indescribable temperament. This temperament was very similar to the original Empress Xianda, but it was even sharper than Empress Xianda. Usually she looked gentle and easy to talk to and would not delve deeply into anything, but once her face turned cold, it would make others feel intimidated. It was very similar to Prince Rui, Xie Yuan's feeling. But before Emperor Yong left, he had instructed Deng Gonggong to wait for Xie Jingxing to return and assist him. Deng Gonggong had lived in the palace of Long Yi since young and could help with many things. Now that Xie Jingxing had not returned, Deng Gonggong naturally could not be careless with Shun Miao's instructions. Deng Gonggong, tidy up. I will go to the previous court, she said. Deng Gonggong was surprised for a moment. The court is in chaos, and at this critical juncture, if bad news were spread, it would be inevitable that the people of Long Yi would panic and chaos would cause trouble. It is better for me to be the bad guy first, and it does not matter what others think. One must first pacify the restless hearts of the people. But Deng Gonggong looked at Shun Miao's lower abdomen and said, "You are still pregnant. It is because of this child that the previous court can be kept in check." Shun Miao smiled gently. With the blood of the imperial family, even if they want to do anything, they would have to worry about their reputation. Even though I am a Ming-Chi person, and they would definitely make an issue out of this, but the child in my stomach has the blood of the imperial family, and no matter what, they would not dare to be disrespectful to me. Eunuch Deng thought for a while and said, "This can indeed calm things down temporarily, but in this way, Princess Yu, your pregnancy can't be hidden anymore. I originally hid it because I didn't want your highness to be distracted on the battlefield. Now that the war is nearing its end, the dust has settled, and victory is right in front of us. There's no need to hide anything." She looked at Eunuch Deng, who was still frowning, and said with a smile, "You are afraid that the palace is not peaceful and someone wants to harm me." Eunuch Deng hurriedly folded his sleeves and said, "I will definitely protect the safety of Princess Consort and the little heir." Shun Miao nodded her head. "Thanks for the trouble." After Deng Gonggong withdrew, Shun Miao then gave a sigh of relief and sat on the chair, looking at the fallen leaves outside the window. Empress Xianda had left in too much of a hurry, and many of the problems she left behind became apparent. The palace that was so big and lively in the spring was now deserted. It actually gave off a feeling of desolation. However, she knew that the matter was far from over. Before Xie Jingxing returned, it was what she had to do to settle down the somewhat chaotic court. "Ever since you were born into my stomach, there was really not a good time," Shun Miao said softly to her stomach, "but everything will be better." 5 days later, the imperial edict of the previous court was made public, and the entire court was in an uproar. Those who had doubts were verified by the ministers. Before Emperor Yong Lu passed away, he had arranged everything properly. All the officials were speechless. Some busybodies said that there was no leader among the officials and requested for a few officials to be elected as regent. But it was rejected, and Shun Miao, the Princess Rui, handled the court matters. Chapter 11:20. In a short period of time, memorials were spread everywhere and rumors flew everywhere. Everyone said that Shun Miao was a Ming-Chi's person and was clearly a spy sent by Ming-Chi. Now that there was no one in court, she wanted to usurp power with wild ambitions. This rumor spread very quickly and also subsided very quickly because Shun Miao appeared in the court with a big belly. And Deng Gonggong, Tao Gugu, and the rest also proved that Empress Xianda brought Shun Miao into the palace because she wanted to protect this only imperial bloodline. With this child, there would be nothing to do in name. In addition, on the day that Shun Miao came out, her methods were thunderous and the checks and balances were subtle, ruthlessly dealing with those troublemakers. She balanced kindness and power, which made others have a feeling that if something were to happen at this time, when Xie Jingxing returns, one fear that there would not be a good result to eat. Half of it was because of the fear of Shun Miao, and the other half was because of the fear of Xie Jingxing. This storm quickly subsided, but Shun Miao did not have a leisurely time. She had to do what she said. Since she had taken up the responsibility, she couldn't just say it casually. These days, she had been looking at memorials. After Emperor Yong Lu passed away, many memorials were accumulated, and with the addition of Empress Yenda's death, the memorials piled up even higher. She looked through the memorials one by one, and sometimes it would be late at night. Jing Zhe and the rest felt sorry for her, but could not persuade her no matter what, so they could only accompany her. Luo Tan was dozing off as she asked, "Biao, youngest sister, why do you need to look at it yourself? If you do not trust those people, you can always trust the trusted aides of the late emperor. Is it not good to hand all these memorials to them and let them look at it? Why do it personally? You are still pregnant with a child in your stomach." Shen Miao shook her head. People's hearts are fickle and power cannot be given out randomly. I am not a Long Yi person, and in a short period of time, one cannot see through a person's heart. One cannot predict if there will be any changes in the future, so it is better to look at these things yourself. When something goes wrong, it is not easy to make up for it. Perhaps Emperor Yonglu originally had trusted aides, but after Emperor Yongli's death and Empress Yenda's death, no one could predict if these people would have other thoughts. If this was Ming Qi, Shen Miao would have an understanding of these people, and naturally it would not be a problem. But this was Long Yi, and she had not been in Long Yi for a long time. Not to mention that in such a short period of time, she was able to completely understand a person's character. In the end, it was because there was no one here that he could trust. Eunuch Deng, who was serving at the side, nodded approvingly. Eunuch Deng inevitably doubted Shen Miao's words. If she just said it casually, wouldn't it be a slap in the face of the royal family in front of so many courtiers? Females would always be more delicate. The things that Empress Yenda could do was because Empress Yenda was the empress, but Shen Miao had never done these things before. Like a man, reading reports till late at night and worrying about the livelihood of the world, to her, it was too much of a stretch. Fortunately, Shen Miao did a good job. Her handling of some matters could even be said to be perfect. Even though Eunuch Deng did not understand the court matters, he was most proficient in observing one's words and body language. Those courtiers initially opposed to and suspected, but recently they had eased up. That meant that Shen Miao did not do too badly, else these people who were nitpicking from the start would not have found any mistakes until now. Eunuch Deng was somewhat gratified. If Shen Miao was such a person, then she would not be inferior to Empress Yenda. Perhaps the Great Liang's country would really be like what Empress Dowager Jing Xian hoped for, lasting for hundreds of generations and evergreen. "This is too hard," Luo Tan said, "but yesterday I heard them discussing after court that your luck is quite good and the few decisions you made were very perfect." "TSK," Luo Tan disdainfully said. "How is it luck? It is clearly true ability. Biao, youngest sister, how can you know everything? You can even read these messy reports in the palace. What else do you not know?" Chapter 1121. Shen Miao rolled her eyes at her. "There are many that do not know. For example," Luo Tan excitedly rushed forward. "For example, not like you, curious about everything." Luo Tan was resentful before continuing. "Anyway, the bitterness is almost over and the sweetness is coming. You are about to give birth and brother-in-law is about to win the war. At that time, Gu Fu and my father will come over and our family will be reunited. Think about it. The hardships now are nothing." Shen Miao gently smiled. Yes, the hardships now were all worth it. Xia Jingxing's news came in a few days. Ming Qi was destroyed, and the Qin country saw that there was no hope of peace, so the Qin emperor fled to the north. Now the Great Liang soldiers were rushing towards the Qin country's capital, and after occupying the capital, Xia Jingxing would first return to the Great Liang. In a sense, the war had already ended, and now they were waiting for the triumphant return of the hero. This was the best news that they had heard since they came in. It is just that, Shen Miao sighed. Xia Jingxing thought that he already knew about the matter of Emperor Yonglu and Empress Yenda. When he returned to the Great Liang and went to the imperial tomb to attend a funeral, one did not know what kind of feeling he would have. The last person in this world who was related to him by blood had left. From now on, he was truly alone. But he was not considered to be alone, as at least there was still Shun Miao and the child. Tao Gugu smiled. It is estimated that the Qin Wang Fei will give birth on the first day of the next month. There's still more than 10 days, so everyone must pay attention in these few days. Luo Tan rubbed her fists. I'm really too happy. It is just that one do not know if it is a little niece or nephew. It makes one's heart curious. I guess it is a little niece, since she is so obedient and does not make a fuss. That is not necessarily so. Tao Gugu said, the Qin Wang Fei's stomach is sharp, and it might be a little air. Shun Miao smiled as she listened to their guesses, but her heart had never felt so secure before. After giving birth to the child and waiting for Xie Jingxing to return, perhaps this year's hardships and chaos would come to an end. In the future, there would finally be good times. However, in this world, there was no such thing as perfection. Even if it was a good ending, there would definitely be 18 twists and turns in the middle. There would be endless difficulties and obstacles, and in the end, there would be some big trouble that would add to the mess. It was as if this was the only way to show the preciousness of a good ending and the difficulty of happiness. As for Shun Miao, when she thought that she would be able to walk unimpeded to a happy ending, she met with such a big trouble. It was an autumn day, the sky was clear, the air was clear, and the wind was gentle. It was a rare good weather. Shun Miao sat at the side of the courtyard, and it was rare for her to finish reading the booklet early. One did not know where Luo Tan went to find a kite, but her childlike innocence had not diminished, and was happily playing with the female officials in the palace. Shun Miao was infected by her laughter and could not help but reveal a smile. She saw eunuch Deng walk in quickly from the outside with a rare solemn expression. When he saw Shun Miao, he indicated for her to walk into the inner hall. Shun Miao saw that he seemed to have something important to say and was supported by Jingzhe to the inner hall. As soon as they arrived at the inner hall, eunuch Deng said, Princess, bad news. The remnants of the Liu family have attacked the city. Remnants of the Liu family? Shun Miao frowned. Everyone from the Liu family. Weren't they all eradicated in Riyang? Among the remnants of the Liu family, second young lady Liu's husband is a military official and kept a private army. At that time, they were not in Longyi, but in the outskirts of Longyi, pretending to be ordinary people. These people have dealings with the Yi family. At the beginning, when the Yi family was in trouble, Yi Mao had given these people a huge sum of money. Now that these people have horses and carriages ready, they have already planned to attack the city and are currently fighting with the city guards. Eunuch Deng said. Chapter 1122. Shun Miao frowned, and after a long while, she said coldly, a centipede dies but does not fall down. In order to deal with the imperial family, the Liu and Yi families really rack their brains. She looked at Deng Gonggong. They are coming for me. Eunuch Deng wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, Princess, just the remnant forces of the Liu and Yi families could not contend against Xie Jingxing, who was leading a large army. The reason why they chose to attack the city at this time was because they had inherited Yi Maokai and Liu Zhengxuan's dying wish, which was to fight to the death. Now in the entire palace, there was only Shun Miao who could make decisions, and Xie Jingxing's child was in her tummy. Perhaps from their point of view, killing Shun Miao and losing the child would make Xie Jingxing feel so much pain that he would wish he was dead. For Xie Jingxing, this was the best revenge. Was this Yi Maokai and Liu Zhengxuan's method? He was already dead, yet he still wanted to disgust him at the end. How many soldiers and horses are there in the city, and how many guards are there in the palace? Shun Miao asked. The palace guards are enough to protect the princess, but those people have already begun to slaughter the common people outside Longya City. Once they entered the city, they would definitely start a massacre. These people were ferocious by nature and mixed in with the crowd. If they wanted to deal with them, they would have to send out a large number of troops. In this way, there will be a shortage of manpower in the palace, and it will be easy for people to take advantage of the loopholes. Shun Miao frowned. That is to say, the palace or the common people. To choose one of the two? Eunuch Deng was silent. He didn't know how to respond when the words were spoken so straightforwardly. Understood. Shen Miao nodded her head. Move the Imperial Guards out to protect the common people. Princess. Eunuch Deng was stunned. You can't ignore your own life and death. If you are in danger, how can I explain it to His Highness? It is not that one want me to disregard my own life and death. Shen Miao said, it is just that do you think that those people are only outside the city? He was afraid that someone had already infiltrated the city. What they were doing was nothing more than arousing the fear of the common people. If they still left the Imperial Guards in charge of the palace at this time, once they said a few words, the common people would be easily incited. If the hearts of the people were unstable, even if the Imperial Palace was impregnable, it would still fall apart. Especially since His Highness is about to return, we can't afford any trouble. Seeing Deng Gonggong's disapproving expression, Shen Miao said, moreover, I will not joke around with my own life. Before His Highness left, he left me some men and horses. They will protect me. Some of the MOU army that were left in the residence of Prince Ray also followed Shen Miao into the palace. She knew in her heart that she didn't have a choice now. Lu Zhengchun and Yi Maocai's final move seemed to be deliberately disgusting. If Shen Miao only cared about herself and did not care about the lives and deaths of the commoners, after this matter, even if Xie Jingxing ascended to the throne in the future, he would end up with the reputation of being cold and selfish. When an emperor first ascended the throne, the most important thing was the support of the people. If he lost the hearts of the people, his foundation would not be stable from the start. Even for Xie Jingxing, he could not let the Imperial Guards only care about the Imperial Palace. Seeing that she seemed to have made up her mind, Eunuch Deng no longer insisted. He went to make arrangements according to her words. Shen Miao, however, was not as indifferent as she looked. She furrowed her brows. If it was in the past, it would have been fine, but it just had to be at this juncture when she was about to give birth. Perhaps the remaining rebels had taken advantage of this opportunity. No matter what, she must protect the child in her stomach. When Luo Tan got the news and rushed over, she was also worried and persuaded her, Biao, youngest sister, it is better for you to go and find a place for us to hide and wait till the child is born. Now the palace is not safe, and everyone knows that you are in the palace. Naturally, the rebels also know about it. Once there are fewer guards in the palace, they will definitely attack. Chapter 1123. Shen Miao shook her head. If I were to leave, one fear that on the second day, those people would say that I escaped for my life. This imperial palace is like a battlefield. I will retreat first. Once the rebels come, the prestige of the imperial family will not be able to be maintained. But Luo Tan still wanted to say something. No buts. Persevere for a few more days, and Xie Jingxing will be back. Shen Miao said, it will be fine as long as one can endure through this period of time. As expected by Shen Miao, in less than the second day, rumors started to spread in the streets and alleys that Rui Wangfei had already led her people to escape and did not care about the life and death of the commoners in Longyi. Now that there was no one who could make decisions in the great Liang imperial court, the remnants of the rebels were fighting with the city guards at the city gate of Longyi, and it was uncertain when they would enter the city, and at that time Longyi would definitely be covered with blood like a river. The people were very kind, and kind people were the easiest to be used by others. Whether it was in words or in reality, the only thing they could rely on was the protection of the emperor. However, after hearing this rumor, the person who could make the decision had already escaped. The rest of them were like fish under a knife, waiting to be slaughtered. For a moment, people were scolding the imperial family for being heartless, and Shen Miao's cold words were heard incessantly. She scolded Xie Jingxing for only caring about his own merits and did not care about the lives of the people of Longyi. She scolded Shen Miao for not having any benevolence and actually abandoned the city to escape. Shen Miao sat at the side of the throne room. She was dressed in a purple gold gown that was flowing with light. Her hair was combed into an orthodox palace bun. She was clearly young, yet she was able to suppress this gloominess. She said Upper Palace Town. The officials looked at each other in dismay before one of them stepped forward and said, Qin Wangfei, Is this move too risky? This person initially opposed Shun Miao, supervising the court, and was the most opposed. However, in recent days, he had become much more well-behaved. Only by taking risks will the people believe that we won't abandon them in times of danger. She stood up, and Jingzhe and Gu Yu quickly supported her. Now that she was pregnant, it was somewhat inconvenient to walk. Although the palace was called a city, it was better to call a city tower. When Shun Miao led the officials up the stairs, there were some commoners gathered below, and the number of commoners increased. Mo Qing led the Mou army, and the Imperial Guard in the palace were all ready to go to prevent any assassins from sneaking up on them. Among the commoners, there were some who recognized Shun Miao, and immediately someone exclaimed, "It's the Qin Wang Fei." In just a short moment, the area below the city gate tower was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Perhaps more than half of the people of Long Yi had come over. Shun Miao looked down and slowly opened her mouth. "Citizens, there have been many rumors recently. The remnants of the Liu family and the rebels of the Yi family are entangled with each other. They even ambushed Long Yi to confuse the people." In the wind, her voice was neither loud nor soft. It seemed to have the power to comfort people, but it was also full of determination, making people feel the determination in her tone. "However, don't be gullible. I swear in the name of Rui Qin Wang Fei that if the city exists, I will exist. If the city perishes, I will die. I am with you, and I will fight with you." There was an uproar below the city walls. There were those who were doubtful, but there were also those who believed. "The soldiers of Great Liang are fighting outside. I am in Long Yi. I'm also a member of Long Ye's Xie family. As long as the Xie family's glory is not extinguished, I will not escape. There were no cowards in a general's family. They could lose, but they couldn't run. Furthermore, how could a mere remnant rebel disrupt the imperial court's order? What a joke." Her words were powerful and clear, but it was not noisy. Everyone looked up at that female, who was wearing a purple gold robe. She slightly raised her chin, and in a trance, one could see the young Qin Wang who was fighting outside. He was also arrogant, but had the qualifications. "So do not believe, do not speak, do not fear, do not be timid. I will be in this imperial palace. See who dares to come." The purple cloak fluttered in the wind, and the flag behind her was raised high. Chapter 1124. The commoners were silent for a moment before cheering together. The cheers shook the heavens, as if it was going to break through the clouds. No one did not like victory. The commoners needed to be appeased, and even more so, needed a domineering oath. The ruler was not present, and this female was able to take up the responsibility. She had courage, and it was admirable and made one feel at ease. It was a very supportive look, and the civil and military officials standing behind her were moved when they saw this scene. The power of words was like this. This female seemed to be able to stir one's heart. She picked the most passionate part of the heart and made people's blood boil. Imperceptibly, it strengthened the Long Yi city gates by another layer. Shun Miao turned and left. In the next few days, the rumors in Long Yi had subsided. Even if there were busybodies inciting, the commoners would immediately refute. After all that day, Shun Miao had personally ascended the palace under such a dangerous situation, and her words were encouraging. As long as the commoners settled down, the power of the people's hearts would be shown. However, the Lui rebels were attacking even more ferociously outside the city. They seemed to be in a frenzy. Shun Miao had to look at the usual memorials and at the same time arrange for the Imperial Guards to reinforce the city's defenses. She was busy all day. Moreover, she was pregnant, so she felt a little powerless. On this day, she had just woken up early when she saw Luo Tan running in. Seeing her, she said, "Biao, youngest sister, someone is here to see you." Shun Miao frowned. "Who?" In the palace, other than speaking a few words to those officials when she was in court, no one would specially come to see her. She did not have any relatives or friends in Long Yi, and the best were all in the palace. "Let me help you out to take a look," Luo Tan said. Luo Tan helped Shun Miao out, and when they reached the main hall, They saw a person sitting at the table, and Jingzhe was pouring tea for that person. The person who came was wearing a green robe and was still as proud as she remembered. Shen Miao cried out involuntarily, "Mr. Pei?" Pei Lang turned his head. One parted for nearly a year, and too many things had happened in this 1 year. In the beginning, when Pei Lang chose to leave, it was already the best choice from some aspects. After all, in the memories of the previous lifetime, no one knew what kind of mood they should have to face the other. When he saw Shen Miao, he smiled instead, heard that Long Yi is in trouble and the palace is in danger. Although I don't have any special abilities, at least I can share some of the burden. Shen Miao frowned and did not speak for a moment. Pei Lang smiled. There is no need to think too much. I am a Ming Qi's person, and in Great Liang, at least we are from the same hometown. Furthermore, they were teacher and student back then, so it wasn't like they didn't have any friendship at all. This time, I'm here to help my fellow villagers. He looked at them with a calm smile, as if nothing had happened. Shen Miao carefully sized him up and saw that his expression was calm, as if he had let go of the past, and her heart could not help but relax. For Shen Miao, that part of the past was something that had happened a long time ago. She placed more importance on the future. Pei Lang's appearance could indeed help her share a lot of problems. She said, "I'm going to owe you another favor. Last time, it was Pei Lang who took a blow for her." "Oh," Pei Lang asked in a soft voice. Then he laughed and said, "It's good that you can think that way." When he raised his head to look at Shen Miao, he said, "Do not waste time. Now start to deal with Long Ye's most important matter." What was the most important matter for Long Yi now? It was naturally to clean up the rebels and protect the safety of the commoners in the city. Because of the war, there were all sorts of court matters, and the number of memorials were endless. It was already very difficult to rely on Shen Miao, who was pregnant, to manage it. Moreover, she was about to give birth and really could not handle such a big movement. Chapter 1125. After Pei Lang came, the burden on Shen Miao's body became lighter. Pei Lang was originally Fu Xiu Yi's advisor and naturally had some understanding of the court's matters. Moreover, he was naturally talented in this aspect, so he was well-rounded. Even if it was his first time entering the Great Liang's court, he was able to do it with ease. But there was also a difficulty. Long Ye's manpower was able to protect the commoners in the city, but to divert the remaining strength to clear out the rebels, it would be too much to care about the head and not the tail. No one dared to take this risk, but it was not a solution to continue in this stalemate. Drag on for another month or so, and when Xie Jingxing returns, these rebels would be cleared out. Shen Miao said to Pei Lang, "It will be fine as long as one persevere through this period of time." Pei Lang was helping to look at the booklet. Neither of them mentioned the previous lifetime or any sensitive matters related to it, as if it was the past that both of them had a tacit understanding. There would not be any benefits in making it clear. Sometimes, acting dumb was the best way to get along. When Pei Lang saw the silly Yi Hongguang, he was stunned for a long time. Most likely he knew that Yi Hongguang and Fu Ming were too similar. Thus, he was exceptionally gentle towards Yi Hongguang, and Yi Hongguang liked to play with the patient Pei Lang. Even so, Pei Lang was somewhat worried, but the Liu family rebels also know this truth. The day before yesterday, the city garrison had already reported, and the Liu family rebels have not made any moves. There must be something strange going on. I have a feeling that they are preparing something. No matter what they are preparing, our situation will not change at all. Shen Miao sighed. Initially, one thought that the Great Liang's border was securely guarded. Long Yi was impregnable, and even if there were any movements, it would only be the mutual suspicion of the officials, who knew that the Liu family still had a card up their sleeves. The Liu family hate the imperial family to the bones, so they knew that they have no hope of victory and still hit a card at the last moment. The old thief's death is not to be regretted. Shen Miao held the booklet, but her eyes were looking out of the window. But Long Yi cannot be lost. Not even one step must be taken. Luo Tan walked over with a food basket and smiled. Both of you have read the booklet for such a long time, and one must eat. Especially Biao's youngest sister. You are not alone now, you have a child. You're starving yourself, but you want my nephew or niece to starve as well. What kind of mother are you? She took the pastries and soup out of the basket and said, Mr. Pei, have some. I've seen everything made in the kitchen with my own eyes. I promise, it's very clean. Luo Tin stayed in the palace all day and seemed to have nothing to do. Shun Miao and Pei Lang were looking at the booklet, and she was unable to help, so she simply put all her thoughts on Shun Miao's child. There were many people in the palace, and eating was even more troublesome. Many women's children were mysteriously lost while eating. Luo Tan simply moved a small stool every day and guarded the imperial kitchen. Even if there was Tao Gugu and Jing Zhiguyu, it was not enough as she had to personally witness all kinds of things being cooked. Shun Miao gently smiled. It has been hard on you. Pei Lang's gaze fell on Shun Miao's bulging abdomen and hesitated for a moment before asking. About. It should be within these few days, right? One cannot say for sure. Shun Miao said, but I feel that it should be soon. She caressed her lower abdomen, and a flash of gentleness appeared in her eyes. It is really difficult for him to be born in such a chaotic time of war. What chaotic time of war? Luo Tan said. Biao's youngest sister's words are not right. One must know that now the world is at peace, and the chaotic times are stable, and it is a prosperous time. When brother-in-law returns, that little fellow will have a father who had won the war, and the entire world will be cheering for his birth. How would one be able to encounter such an honor? Why does such a good thing sound like a bad thing when it comes from your mouth? Chapter 1126. Shun Miao laughed in spite of herself. You're so good at talking. Why not go and sing and tell stories? Luo Tan was proud of herself. If I go and sing and tell stories, I will definitely become the #1 in the world. Pei Lang saw that both of them were talking excitedly and shook his head with a smile. It will be fine after this period of time. One only hoped that the remaining rebels will not create any other incidents at this time. The heavens did not follow one's wishes, and Pei Lang's words became a prophecy 2 days later. The more critical it was, the more one could not have any slip-ups. As long as they could endure through this period of time, Xie Jingxing would return and solve Long Ye's danger. No matter if it was the rebels or the traitors, they would forever disappear from the great Liang's lands. From then on, the Qin country of Ming Qi would no longer exist, and there would only be one great Liang in the world. This prosperous country would all fall into Xie Jingxing's hands. Even if they escaped to the ends of the earth, these people would be like ants, like stray dogs, and would never be at peace. From the start, they did not plan to leave alive, else they would not have attacked Long Yi. But the premise was to kill Shun Miao and the flesh and blood in her womb. Then this battle to the death would be worthwhile. Now that the days had passed, the commoners were not successfully incited and the imperial family was stable. The rebels would also be anxious. They were anxious to make the entire Long Yi into a mess, so that when Xie Jingxing returns, he will be faced with a mess and the tragic death of his wife and child. Thus they launched a crazy attack on Long Yi 2 days later. Just like Pei Lang guessed, there must be a demon in the abnormal situation. They formulated a detailed plan, and this plan was originally made by Lu Maokai to force the abdication, but now one did not expect that it would be used to deal with the imperial city where there was no one. But just like what Shun Miao said, no matter what, their situation would not change at all. In Lu Maocai's plan, the Lu family soldiers would deal with the imperial guards. Now that these remaining rebels were not as brave as the Lu family soldiers, and these imperial guards were not as much as Emperor Yonglu, it was just enough to fight to a draw. If the imperial guards were to be deployed to protect the commoners, there would naturally be fewer people in the imperial palace. Shun Miao's situation was also very dangerous. Qin Wang Fei, why not summon more people back to the palace? Deng Gonggong said, one fear that it is safer to have more people in the palace. It is useless to have 1 or 2 more people, but there is no one outside. Never mind. Shun Miao said, let be like this, it will be all right to guard tonight. The thieves also needed to rest and recuperate. Since they had failed to attack the city tonight, their morale was naturally reduced by half. Tonight is the most stressful time. After tonight, things will be much easier. Aunt Tao was a little nervous. But I'm worried. And Princess Yu, is the child in your belly really okay? Shun Miao subconsciously touched her lower abdomen. These days, she could clearly feel the child kicking and moving in her abdomen. But tonight it was very calm. He smiled and said, "He's probably asleep. He also knows that he shouldn't cause trouble at this time. So he's very obedient." Pei Lang said, "Since we've made up our minds, we'll guard this place. But you still have to be fully prepared. Once something happens, let the entire MOU army come over and protect you to escape to a safe place." Although they had to defend the palace, human lives were the most important. Even if the commoners find out that you escaped, they won't blame you. After all, you still have to protect the royal bloodline. Shen Miao nodded her head. "I also think so." "Then everyone brace yourselves up." Luo Tan said, "Now is the most important night, and we are all in the Imperial Palace. The more it is at this time, the more united we must be. One must know that there is no hurdle that cannot be overcome. This year is almost over, and it is nothing more than some nameless scoundrels. What is there to be afraid of?" Chapter 11:27. Luo Tan grew up with a Luo family and had a sense of heroism and courage in her bones. The more dangerous the situation, the more she was not afraid. Her words made the blood of everyone in the palace boil with excitement. Even the palace maids and eunuchs in the Weiyang Palace all knelt down and said that they would live and die with the Imperial Palace. But it was not that hopeless. Shen Miao sat in the middle of the hall. The hall was very spacious, and when it was too spacious, it seemed somewhat vast. Pei Lang sat at the side flipping through the booklet, while Shen Miao was in the hall looking at the documents that were sent by the court officials. As for Luo Tan, one did not know where she found the 9 interlocking rings to play with. Tao Gonggu and Deng Gonggu sat at the side and warmed the tea from time to time. It seemed that each of them had their own matters and were very busy. This diluted the tense atmosphere a little. But it was only a little because from time to time there would be reports from the Imperial Guards. What was the current situation in the city? Those rebels were indeed ferocious and massacred the commoners everywhere, as if they wanted to go against the imperial family, causing panic everywhere. Fortunately, Shen Miao had mobilized more than half of the imperial guards and the city guards to fight with the Lu family endlessly, and for a moment, there was no telling who had the upper hand. These rebels were very cunning. A portion of them were disturbing the hearts of the commoners, and a portion of them were secretly outflanking and attempting to attack the imperial palace. Listening to the sounds of weapons clashing and the shouts of the soldiers from time to time. Occasionally, with the light of the fire, it was impossible for anyone to truly calm down. It was like a valve that was pulled to its fullest, loosened, and then pulled to its fullest. Every move and action would affect one's heart, making it hard for one's heart to settle down. This night was exceptionally long, so long that the smoke from the incense burner was especially slow and scattered in the air, giving off a quiet fragrance, but it made one's heart jump to their throat. When the morning light shone, the movements outside gradually became smaller. Deng Gonggong and Tao Gonggu also revealed an expression of being relieved of a heavy burden. The head of the Imperial Guards came in from outside and said to Shen Miao, replying to Qin Wang Fei, "The Lu family rebels have withdrawn out of the city, and the rebels in the city have been purged. The city guards are currently pacifying the commoners." This meant that the crisis had passed. Luo Tan stretched lazily. She had been fiddling with the 9 interlocking rings for the whole night without being able to solve it. It wasn't that she was stupid, but her mind had not been on the 9 interlocking rings the whole night, so it was a wonder that she could solve it. She yawned. Even though she was excited, she could not hide her tiredness and said, "Biao, youngest sister, the crisis has been resolved. I accompanied you for a night, and it can be considered as a little contribution." Shen Miao raised her head. She was better than Luo Tan. Other than looking tired, she was not that sleepy. He only smiled and said, "Everyone has worked hard. When His Highness returns, they will be rewarded according to their contributions." The leader of the guards also smiled and said, "Qin Wang Fei has worked hard too. To be able to remain calm at such a critical juncture and even accompany them in the palace for an entire night. From a certain point of view, it could be said that he was fighting alongside them. For a female to be able to do all these, it would be especially admirable. Moreover, everyone could clearly see what kind of person Shen Miao was these days. If it was not for her leading and suppressing Long Yi, one fear that Long Yi would be in a mess now. Pei Lang also raised his head from the booklet and looked at Shen Miao with a slight smile, as if he was relaxed. Tao Gonggu was most worried about Shen Miao's body and said, "Since everything is all right, Qin Wangfei should rest first. Ordinary people would not be able to stand it after sitting for an entire night, not to mention a double body." She came over to support Shen Miao. Shen Miao was supported by Tao Gonggu and just took a step out. She felt that her abdomen dropped, and she suddenly paused. Chapter 1128. When Luo Tan saw it, she said, "Your body must be stiff from sitting for a long time. Let me help you massage it. When one's legs and feet are numb, it is difficult to take a step." "It is not so." Shen Miao forced herself to calm down and said, "First help me to invite a midwife over." Tao Gugu and Luo Tan were startled at first, but it was Tao Gugu who immediately reacted. One could not say if she was more excited or panicked as she said, quickly invite the two midwives from the palace over." Midwives were the best midwives and were famous midwives in Longyi. No matter how difficult the birth was, it was just a small matter in their hands. In order to be safe, Tao Gugu found two of them. The leader, older maid Li, said, "Qin Wangfei need not be nervous. It is the first time for a female to give birth. The first time is strange, but the second is familiar. After the first time, one would not be afraid in the future, and it would be very smooth." Older maid Lu was older than older maid Li and scolded, "What nonsense are you saying in front of the nobles?" She then looked at Shen Miao and said curiously, "But Qin Wangfei is very calm. This older maid has delivered so many young ladies, but it is the first time to see one this calm." Shen Miao was supported to lie on the bed. Her expression was calm, as if she did not take this matter to heart. From the beginning to the end, she did not show any expression of panic, which almost made people think that it was not the first time she gave birth. But even if it was the second time giving birth, those matrons would not be this relaxed. Shen Miao's heart was clear that she was not as calm as she looked. Her memory of the child could be traced back to a long time ago. At that time, Fu Xiu did not care about her, and giving birth seemed to be very difficult, so she gave birth to the child with uneasiness. Now this child came into this world with everyone's expectations. No matter if it was Xie Jingxing and herself, or Empress Yinda and Emperor Yongle, everyone in the Shun family knew that she was pregnant and would definitely treasure this child. The more precious something was, the more one would be afraid of it being broken. She forced herself to inhale and exhale deeply to get rid of the messy things in her mind. "Qin Wangfei, get up and eat something first." Older maid Li picked up the bowl of brown sugar and eggs from the side and placed it in front of Shen Miao. "One will only have strength after eating something. It will take some time for the birth of the child, and one will have to wait for a while." Shen Miao took it over. Actually, she did not have much appetite, but she still managed to finish the entire night. "Qin Wangfei isn't delicate at all," Lu Pezi praised. "Those young wives in the past always had a bit of a temper. If she was the wife of a wealthy family, she would be even more picky. She refused to eat even a little, saying that she was not feeling well. Later on, she had no strength to give birth, and she was the one who suffered. Qin Wangfei is very sensible. This way, when the child is born, it will be very smooth." She saw that Shen Miao's expression was gentle and was not picky about their village identity. Thus, when she spoke, she was also intimate and not overly polite. Shen Miao knew that both of them were talking to distract her, so that time would pass faster. After all, she hadn't even given birth yet. Outside, Aunt Tao and the others were waiting. Luo Tan said, "My heart is beating very fast. Want to not know if youngest Biao younger sister will give birth to a boy or a girl. After being curious for so long, there is finally an answer." No matter if it is the little heir or little Junju, when His Highness Prince of First Rank returns, he would be very happy and in pain. Aunt Tao smiled. One just do not know how long one would have to wait. Deng Gonggong also appeared somewhat nervous. This is, after all, the first junior of the imperial family. If Her Majesty the Empress, His Majesty the Emperor, and Empress Dowager's spirits in heaven, they would feel gratified. Chapter 1129. Needless to say, the people of Prince Rui's residence were like this. Even Mo Qing, who usually did not show his emotions on his face, looked so red. Song Yang was jumping up and down nonstop as he said, "Before I left, I made a bet with Tai. I bet that I would give birth to a little Junju, and I bet all my wealth. If I lose, I won't even be able to protect my wife." Jingja happened to hear it and scoffed. "I see that it is a little heir." "Hey, why is it the little heir?" Song Yang asked. "I think it's the little Canton princess. Little Sheetsi is little Sheetsi." Jingja was not to be outdone. "Stop quarreling. Go you try to smooth things over. Are you quarreling or not? Where's Uncle Tang?" Uncle Tang was in the corner, chanting Ba as he whispered, "Ancestors of the Shao family, please bless the princess consort and her son's safety, mother and daughter's safety, everyone's safety." From morning to afternoon, Shun Miao finally began to give birth in the evening. The midwife asked the palace maids to prepare clean water, towels, clean scissors, and other things. Luoten wanted to go in and take a look, but Aunt Tao stopped her. Tao Gugu and a few palace maids went in, along with Jingja and Guyu, so that no one would do anything. Shun Miao moaned softly on the bed. She endured it as best she could, but the pain grew stronger and stronger until it was almost excruciating. The pain was worse than any physical pain she had experienced since her rebirth. It was as if someone was cutting her abdomen with a pair of scissors. "Qin Wangfei, work harder. Use more strength." Older Maidli said, "I can see the child's shadow." Outside, Pei Lang and the others felt as if time was passing like a year. From time to time, palace maids would carry a silver basin in and out, and the blood in the basin was a shocking sight. Luo Tan anxiously grabbed the nanny beside her and asked, "What's going on? Why is there so much blood?" The wet nurse comforted her. "It doesn't matter. Women have to bleed when giving birth. Don't worry." However, Pei Lang's heart was far away. In the past lifetime, Fu Xiu did not care about Fu Ming and Wan Yu's birth at all. At that time, he happened to pass by, and Fu Xiu let him take a look. When Shun Miao was giving birth to a child, from a certain point of view, it was Pei Lang who accompanied her through it. She did not expect that in this lifetime, Xie Jingxing was not by her side, and he was the one who accompanied her through it. This was also good. At least at this moment, she was not alone. At least he had been there for her. Every moment felt extremely long. After an unknown period of time, an old maid in the room exclaimed, "He's out. It's the little heir. Yeah, there's another one. They're twins. Twins. Prince Consort is so lucky." Not long after, he heard a wah sound coming from inside. The baby's cry was very loud. Everyone was overjoyed. Luo Ten almost fainted from happiness. But before they could catch their breath, they heard older Maidli exclaim, "Qin Wang Fei, hold on. Don't sleep. Don't sleep." Pei Lang's heart tightened, and before he could react, he heard Tao Gu's sorrowful voice, "Qin Wang Fei, hold on." Luo Tan was impatient and no longer cared about being afraid. She entered the room. Pei Lang hesitated for a moment before hearing Tao Gu's voice, "Teacher Pei. Teacher Pei, come in." Pei Lang rushed into the room. Shun Miao was covered with a quilt, and her face was incomparably pale. She said to older maid Lu and older maid Li beside her, "It is all right as long as the child is saved." Qin Wang Fei. Older maid Lu and older maid Li still wanted to say something, but could not speak. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.